Casual Birder podcast, a weekly podcast for people interested in wild birds. I'm Susie Buttress. As a casual birder, I try to find time to watch birds as I go about my daily tasks. Join me each week to hear about the birds I've seen, interviews with others, and stories from listeners around the world. This week, I look back to a bird walk I took in the summer in Prospect Park in New York City. I share my birding week, and we hear from Mum, the co-host of Rough Giraffe podcast. In June this year, I visited New York City for a few days. My friend Sarah from Toledo met up with me there. I was keen to visit Prospect Park as I was staying in Brooklyn and had heard it was a good birding location. It covers 585 acres, is right in the heart of Brooklyn, and has been designated an important bird area in New York State by National Audubon. Its location on the Migration Flyway means that a large number of species might stop off there during the spring and the fall. That wasn't hugely helpful for me in June, but I figured a large park was bound to show me some unfamiliar woodland birds. One of the things that appealed to me about the park is that it's used by the local community, and as a casual birder, I wanted to see what birds regular park visitors might see if they were just wandering around. Although Sarah has a passing interest in birds, it's not one of her main pastimes, but she was kind enough to accompany me on my walk through the park. Whenever I visit a new location, I visually search for the birds that are around and listen out for the calls. I'm familiar with most bird families, or at least know the key things to look out for to narrow down the family of the bird I've seen. As I walked around with Sarah, I realised that, for beginners, it can be difficult to know what to look for because everything is unfamiliar. If I see an unfamiliar bird, I'll note the size, beak shape, plumage colour, other distinguishing features, and any specific behaviours. And these will generally help me get to the right part of a bird identification guide to work out what I might be seeing. Of course, there are times when the sheer similarity of birds within a group makes a confirmed identification difficult without more expert help. But my technique helps me for the majority of cases. Birds that I hear, rather than see, present more of a challenge. I'll generally consider whether it sounds like a bird I already know. Using a bird identification app, I'll try and narrow down the choices. However, if I cannot see the bird, it'll most likely have to remain unidentified. One of the first birds we saw was the house sparrow. There were a group of them at the base of a tree bathing in the dust. One of the males started displaying to a female, and I'll hand over to Sarah to describe what took place.
That was brilliant.
So Sarah, what was it that we just saw?
We saw a male getting super turned down by a female, like she was not having him at all, and he was chasing her around, and she just kept like trying to headbutt him, basically, like, no, I don't think so. And finally, she just got, frustrated and flew off, and he puffed his feathers up frustratedly and flew off in the other direction, and it was beautiful.
So that was some house sparrows that we were watching just in Prospect Park here in Brooklyn. We continued walking down to the southern end of the park, towards the large lake. I heard a bird call which sounded a bit like a green woodpecker. And as I was scanning the tree nearby, I saw a flash of orange which got me very excited. I had definitely spotted an exotic, to me, bird. Then I heard the sound of chicks calling nearby. They were in a nest which was hanging from a branch, kind of like a basket. Okay, so we're standing under a tree and we noticed that there was a lot of calling and it sounded almost woodpecker-like, but I've now realised there's a nest in the tree. And here's the bird. So that was the noise of the chicks calling in the nest when the adult arrived. So I still haven't had a clear view of what the bird looks like, but it's yellow with a black head. Did you happen to notice the shape of the beak at all, Sarah?
Oh, these are things I don't look for, so I didn't know. I just saw the really pretty yellow, orangey yellow color. That was about it.
Yeah, so at the moment I don't know if it's a black-headed grosbeak, for example, or whether it's an oriole. I'm not sure what type of nests they have. I'm just going to take the binoculars back off Sarah so that I can get first look when it comes back.
You take them.
So what I'll do is when it comes back, I will describe what the bird is, and that will give me some clue to look at when I'm looking up later in the identification guides. The other thing I've noticed while we've been standing here is there's a hole in the tree where a branch used to be, and a European starling flew straight in there, so there's clearly a nest inside there as well. So this is a good tree for them. An American robin has just turned up, flown down to the ground to get some food. But what I'm really focused on in the moment is seeing what this adult bird is. So I've set the binoculars up already to focus on it. Also, what Sarah noticed when she was looking through the binoculars was, what did you notice about the nesting materials?
Oh, they've definitely grabbed something from what it looks like on the end of a child's bicycle, like the rainbowy plastic tinsely stuff on the ends of that. There's a few of the strands of those up there, and it made me smile when I saw it. They wanted their nest to be colorful. I love that.
This particular nest is a small cup nest, and it's got a lot of what look like cobwebs plastered into it. Definitely dried grasses, some of this tinsel. While we've been standing here, the starlings have come back and gone into the nest. Okay, I think the adult bird might be coming back. Oh, here we go. Okay, so definitely oranges and browns, black head. It has a very sharp beak. I think it's some sort of oriole. So it seems to be chocolatey brown on top, and it might be the female. And a lovely sort of tangy orange underneath. But yeah, it had a reasonably pointed beak, but not a thin pointed beak. Oh, it's gorgeous when it flies. It's really obvious, isn't it? Just have to hope Sarah's not getting bored. Are you getting bored, Sarah?
No, I'm good. Don't worry. This is weirdly fascinating to me right now.
Excellent. So I should say we're out in Prospect Park in Brooklyn. We've come for a walk through the park just to see what birds we can see. I've had a couple of days without doing any bird watching. Well, that's not quite true. I have seen some birds. I've seen feral pigeons, European starlings and house sparrows. And that's pretty much all I've seen, and just heard the odd mourning dove. And so, yeah, great city birds, but not the city birds I wanted to see in America, because I can see those city birds back home. But there are quite a few American robins around now that we've come out into the park. I've seen a couple of swifts and martins flying around. With any luck, the adult bird will be back in a second. This could be it coming back in now. Oh, beautiful. I'm sure that's an oriole. In fact, I think this one is the adult male. The colours are much stronger on it.
I agree. I was going to say that. That's so cool.
Definitely a black head. Beautiful, beautiful orange colour. Yeah, and so the female, I think, is what we saw earlier, and that had more of a chocolate brown head. So just going to check my app and see if we can work out what that is. For this trip, I used the iBird Pro and the Audubon app. I was convinced the bird was an oriole due to the bright yellow and orange plumages we were seeing on the parent birds, the sharp beak and the dark head. Orioles are birds that I'm not terribly familiar with, but I had recently seen orchard orioles in California. I started off by looking at those. Okay, so it's not the orchard oriole. I think it's a Baltimore oriole.
Yeah.
Because the female, the female is yellower with a kind of brownish head, and the male is really orange.
Yes, and the dark, almost red in the middle. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, much redder than the female. Both of them are feeding the young. Yay, a Baltimore oriole. That's excellent. That's another new one for the list. Okay, we'll just have another look because it was exciting and it's a beautiful colour bird, and then we'll head on and see what else we can find. So a couple of things I was looking for there, Sarah, to just explain what the descriptions were I was looking for. I wanted to look at the bill shape because that will give you a clue as the type of bird it is. If it's a bunting or a finch, it's likely to have quite a short bill, quite stubby. That had a long pointed bill, and it wasn't as fine as a very insecty kind of eating bird like some sort of warbler. They often have very thin long bills, but this was like chunky, but then it went to a point, so it's quite a distinctive beak. And then obviously the black head. Then when we saw it, just trying to work out, okay, how far did the hood extend down the neck? Was there a black breast or a coloured breast? Here we go. Oh no, it's the starling come back to its nest. Interesting that the nests are quite close together in the tree, but I'm guessing that the birds don't interact because they have such different food requirements. So the starling is nesting in a hole in the tree, and so when it goes into the nest it's totally hidden. The oriole has this web or grassy bowl that is built in the edges of a branch, so it's just hanging down with the leaves of the tree, and it's probably about 10 to 15 feet away from the starling nest. Okay, we'll leave this nest now and we'll walk on and see what else we can find.
Sounds
so
good.
That was really good. So I've had my attention attracted by another bird. I have a feeling it might be an American robin, but it'd be nice to see it so that I can confirm that sound goes with that bird. And of course it'll be quiet now that I want to see it. Okay, I saw the bird jump through, but it went to the far side of a trunk and that wasn't helpful. So we give up on that one. However, there are others around. Their call really penetrates though, because I think that's several trees back. Yeah, I'm pretty sure these are American robins. So as you can hear from the background, we're in New York. So that was NYPD police. So yeah, at least I identified that one. See, this is good. You hear the sound, you see the object, you identify it. That was NYPD.
She's teaching me a lot of things right now. I'm understanding more and more.
So I'm definitely seeing robins flying around. So I'm 80% sure that call was a robin. There are a lot of them around. I think I've just seen my first cardinal. Yeah, it was a cardinal. I've seen a cardinal. Everyone, hey, it was on top of that. It was on top of that box thing. So I don't know if that's the noise. We'll just stand here for a second and see. But it was an all red bird with black facial markings. I didn't see a crest. I would like to see it again to be sure that that's what I saw, but I'm pretty sure it was a cardinal, male cardinal. If we see it out in the open, I'll lend you binoculars so you can have a look. Although you have seen cardinals before, haven't you?
I sent you a video.
You did?
One time outside.
Oh, there it is. Look, it's still there on top of the... It's just its tiny little head peeking up the top. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Now, I think it's a cardinal. I just want to see it again to be sure. But that face is looking... There he goes.
Oh, absolutely. I think so too.
Yeah. So there's already a bird calling an alarm anyway, so I don't think I'm going to be disturbing it. Okay, that bird that's calling is not a bird, it's a chipmunk. It's on the side of the tree just there.
Oh, really?
It's just, you can see a little brown lump on the side of the tree.
Oh, yeah.
That's the chipmunk.
That's him?
Yeah, I can see his throat going. So that's a chipmunk. So there you go, that's a useful thing to learn. That noise is a chipmunk. Meanwhile, we'll just wait for a moment to see if the cardinal comes back. I'm so excited. I've now seen a Baltimore oriole and a cardinal. That's fantastic. And I saw a western bluebird when I was in LA. So it'd be good if I saw an eastern bluebird, but let's not dream of the star. No, what is it? Let's not hope for the moon. We have the stars. Okay, so that noise there is a young, I think, grackle. Just waiting to see their parent again. That other noise you can hear that's kind of like a purring almost, that's young starlings.
Oh, okay.
But this one, although it looks like a starling, it's making a different noise. And its parent was dark black and shiny, and I think was a grackle. And you can hear these European starlings, babies. Oh, is that the parent? Yeah, so I'm not sure what that is. I think it's a grackle of some sort. Yep, there's two of them. So I've just seen some waxwings. I'm not sure. I think they're cedar waxwings. Just checking to see where it went. Very rarely see those. See them in Nova Scotia, but I've never seen them elsewhere. We sometimes have Bohemian waxwings in the UK, but generally in an eruption year when they come in from Europe. But there was a pair of them here just now, and I recognise them from the splayed tail and the yellow tips to the tail, and the very smooth plumage. And I just saw a hint of a face and the markings on the face. So it's just because I already knew that bird that I was able to know what it was. But I very rarely see them. I totally didn't expect to see those here. So that's amazing.
Cool.
There's also several blackbirds or black-coloured birds that were coming up to a bush with mine. So I'm just going to check what they are. I think they might be grackles, but I just want to double check. Oh my God, no, it's a red-winged blackbird. So this is something I've very, very rarely seen. Best seen when they've actually got their wings open. There's a small piece of water here with some trees around, and I've seen a lot of animals, a lot of birds flying into this bit. So I'm just have a quick look just to see what might be here. Yeah, I think there's a whole flock of red-winged blackbirds there. There's a couple of reddish-looking squirrels in the tree. This is a real oasis spot for these animals. There's so much here. Oh, wow. So that was a red-winged blackbird male just pulled in and flew down, and they're just really stunning when they open their wings. But again, they're not so stunning when they've got the wings shut. But at least I've seen it, so I know that they're here. After seeing the red-winged blackbirds, we headed on through the park to get to a bookshop in Flatbush Avenue that we'd planned to visit. Because time was tight for getting ready for the other events we had planned that day, going to Cobble Hill Cinema and dancing at the Bell House, I totally forgot to ask Sarah if she'd enjoyed our walk. I very much enjoyed walking around with her, although I suspect my passion for the birds I was seeing left her a little perplexed at times. Since visiting Brooklyn, I've found an amazing resource that I'll definitely use if I manage to get back there someday, the Bird in Brooklyn website. There are so many wonderful birding possibilities, including Jamaica Bay and Saltmarsh Nature Centre. Check out Brooklyn Bird Club for further suggestions. And watch out for my future episode featuring a bird walk in Greenwood Cemetery, Brooklyn. Last weekend I visited the Isle of Wight, a small island off the southern coast of England. It takes an hour by car ferry to travel from Southampton to Cowes across the Solent, as this stretch of water is known. Although we were staying on the southern edge of the island, I was particularly keen to spend a day at Newtown Creek, which had been recommended to me by a birder I met in the bird hide at the Vine a few weeks ago. The location didn't disappoint. When we arrived, the tide was out, and there were lots of wading birds probing the sandbanks for food. I was able to watch large groups of sanderling, dunlin, redshank and a few ringed plovers very close by as they each fed or moved around, each in their own distinctive ways. Trying to identify these similarly coloured, constantly moving birds can feel very daunting at first. Generally speaking, all were in winter plumage and showed white undersides and brown upperparts. So I looked for the features that helped me group the birds, even though they were all mixed in together. Size was a good differentiator. There were large ones, medium ones, and small ones, and some even smaller ones. I could see very quickly that some of the medium-sized birds had long orange-red legs and long red beaks tipped with black. These were the redshank, so named for their red legs. With their longer legs, they were able to wade out into the shallow water a little bit further and search for food. The smallest birds visible were dunlin, busily pushing their beaks into the sand and moving around quickly. These also had brown upperparts and white underparts, and they have a slightly down-curved black beak and dark legs. The sanderling was somewhere between these two size-wise. They had straight black beaks and dark legs. I got some video of all the birds feeding together, which I'll put in the Facebook group. And when I was watching the video back, I had to watch quite carefully because it almost felt like I'd recorded the video in fast time. The little birds move so fast, they're like characters from a 1920s movie. It's quite interesting to see. The ringed plover there were much easier to identify. Small birds, brown plumage above and white underparts, but with a black ring around the neck and another through the eye and around the back of the head, and they have yellow-orange legs and a short dark beak. I particularly noticed how the ringed plover ran a few steps and then stopped for a few seconds, with one foot poised to take the next step, but motionless. Further off were the bigger birds. There were curlew, oystercatcher, a couple of turnstone, and a small flock of brent geese. The curlew is a large bird, mottle brown feathers with a very long down-curved beak and long legs. The oystercatcher is a black and white bird with a long red beak and red eye and pinkish legs. The turnstone is a smaller bird, again dark brown upper parts and white underparts, and a short beak but with bright orange legs. The brent geese are a type of bird that I've only seen once before in Dublin in Ireland. They're mostly dark when you see them out on the water, but you can see that they have a small white collar, and you might see that they've got a white rump as well. They also have quite a distinctive call. I also spotted a red-breasted merganser in the water and a small flock of golden plover in one of the nearby fields. Oh, and on the walk back, as the dusk was falling, we saw 2 short-eared owls, my first ever. They were both hunting, and I got some great views of them. But I'll speak more of this in my upcoming owl episode. All in all, it was a pretty wonderful day's birding. We had a great time on the Isle of Wight, and I look forward to some future visits. Do check out the Facebook group and Instagram account for the photos and videos for this episode. I love hearing your bird stories and sightings, and this week I'm delighted to have received a recorded message from Mum from the Rough Giraffe podcast. She tells us about some of her local birds now that she's living in Spain, and sets us a bit of a challenge.
Hola, buenos dias. This is Mum, also known as the better-looking half of Rough Giraffe podcast. And greetings to you, Susie, and to all casual birders listening. Earlier this year, I moved to Spain, just a few feet from the largest saltwater lagoon in Europe, the Mar Menor. And the Mar Menor is an amazing place for wildlife. We have lizards and snakes, lots of geckos, wild boar in the woodlands, and sea otters. Just about anyone that visits the Mar Menor knows that the bird the area is most famous for is the greater flamingo. We have a resident flock here of around 100, but more and more are joining every day. In Spanish, flamingo is flamenco. I wonder if it has anything to do with the dance. But although the flamingos are possibly the celebrities, my favourite is something much smaller, but still very common here. It's a black-winged stilt. Now, I'd not heard of these until I came to Spain, but if you see one running, how can I describe it? Imagine a slightly tipsy teenage girl on a Saturday night running for a bus and in high heels. And that's what that bird reminds me of. Almost impossibly long legs. Pink legs, a needle-sharp black beak, very bright eye, a white body and black wings, obviously from the name. And they stab into the mud with their sharp beaks to get the small crustaceans out. Now, before I go, this morning around 7:30, I made a recording of the birds that I could hear from my balcony, and I just wondered if you could work out what they were. All I know is that I can't hear any parakeets, los paraquitos, or any seagulls, los gaviotos. But I'd be interested to know what you can actually hear, Susie. So until next time, I'll say cheerio and great to talk to you all. Bye, hasta luego, as we say in Spain.
What a great description of a black-winged stilt that was. I don't think I've ever seen any, but I definitely want to now. Unfortunately, I can't identify any of those birds recorded, but I bet one of you out there will know what they are. Do let us know on Twitter or in the Facebook group. Last episode, we heard the recordings that Lorne had heard of the owls in her neighbourhood. I sent the recordings into the British Trust for Ornithology as I'd not been able to identify the owl from my apps or from the usual online sources. They identified it as a tawny owl. I also mentioned last episode that I'd met Doug Kelson, a local naturalist, in the hide at the Vine. He emailed me to comment on Lorne's owl. He said, "I noted one of your listeners wanting an ID for an owl call, almost certainly a female tawny, and you probably know about their duetting, the male uttering the well-known hoot in response to the kiwik or tu-wit of the female, thus the tu-wit tu-woo call. If you type Zeno Canto tawny owl, you'll be presented with a very good website which will let you listen to many recordings of tawny and other owls, and a huge range of birds from all over the world. I've put the link to Zeno Canto in the show notes, but it's XENO-CANTO. Doug goes on to say, in your podcast, you describe the differences between mallard and gadwall. Check out Zeno Canto to learn the differences between their very different calls. You included laughing mallards in your Vine recording. Well, that loud, raucous cackle is produced by the female only. The male is much quieter and squeakier. Thanks so much for writing in, Doug. I didn't realise about the female mallards making the laughing call, and I'm going to pay a lot more attention in the future when I see these birds. Heather, from Sunshine and Power Cuts podcast, sent in a couple of bird recordings. Heather lives in New Zealand, and it's wonderful to be reminded that the spring and the breeding season is well underway there. The first recording is of some baby starlings in a nest in the rafters of an open shed. The second recording is of the dawn chorus. I believe Heather was up at 5 a.m. this particular morning. Well, I was able to spot a European blackbird, chickens, sheep and a tui in the recording. If you can hear any other birds, do let me know. Thanks to everyone who sent in their sightings and recordings. If you want to find out more about the birds mentioned in the show, visit rspb.org.uk or audubon.org. And I'd love to know what birds you've seen this week. Join our Facebook group to discuss this week's episode, or post your photos of the birds you've seen. I really do enjoy hearing your tales, so come and join the conversation there. Find us at facebook.com/groups/Casual Birder Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Casual Birder Pod or on Instagram at Casual Birder Podcast. You can email me at casualbirderpod@gmail.com. Make sure you don't miss any episodes by subscribing to the show. Subscribing is free and you can do it wherever you listen to the show. Thank you to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at www.dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder Podcast.